Carl, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Today is Wednesday, and it is Win Wednesday, where we win together. All short-term rental house win together. So, I want to introduce my boy Carl right here. He is an operator, and he does full-time short-term rental marketing in Albuquerque nationally. So, we've got him on board today to come bring some value to our little group, and a few people RSVP, which is pretty cool. And welcome, Carl.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for the invite. Very excited to help everybody win and get together. And, I think it's just wonderful having the owners of short-term rentals collaborate and find ways to make more money and offer greater experiences for our guests.
1000%, man. And it is all about that marketing, right? If you don't have those guests in and you don't market correctly, you don't change your listing or your property and make it look desirable and attractive and put it out there widely to more people, then you cannot provide that five-star guest experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about the guests at the end of the day, because if you take care of those guests, then you're going to do very well in this business.
I do agree with that. So, Carl, let's get to the nitty gritty, man. Let's bring some value to the crew today on this group. I know that we discussed a little bit about some topics, and we're going to go through maybe 3 or 4 topics for about 30 minutes, and we'll go back and forth. We'd like to know a little bit about what you've got going on in your business, and then we can go back and forth and just discuss what we've got on in our businesses, right? Tell me a little bit more about exactly what you do with your clients and how you're helping them achieve wider distribution. And what is that to you?
Right. No, great question. So my company is Irvie Homes. It's IRVIE and then Homes. You can always check it out on irviehomes.com to get a good sense of everything that I do. Essentially, I help our homeowners market their properties and get more reservations. And there's a few different techniques that I do to help them do that. But one of the biggest things is mass distribution. And that essentially takes one listing and puts it on all of the different websites out there. So we have it on Airbnb, we've got it on VRBO and HomeAway, we've got it on TripAdvisor, we hit up the entire Expedia group, and then we also hit up Booking.com. Now, a lot of people are really enamored with Airbnb, and it is a wonderful channel. Here in the US, I'd say, 60, 70% of our reservations will come through that channel, but not all of them. And when you hit a wider distribution, take a guess. Do you have any idea how many users there are on Booking.com per year?
I am pretty sure that it is double Airbnb, right? And nobody knows. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was just a guess.
It is. It's double Airbnb. 450 million people are using Booking.com. Similarly, when you look at Expedia, you've got hundreds of millions of people using these platforms. So Airbnb, wonderful source of revenue. I think for vacation rentals and short-term rentals, it can be a go-to for a lot of people. But if you're not on all the other channels, then you're ignoring, 30, 40% of the marketplace out there that may be looking to book your rental.
Right. So for someone like yourself, like you've actually got, you're working with all these platforms. That's our goal. Like we've got over 45 properties, and 95% of our reservations come through Airbnb. Some come through a little bit VRBO. We're not in Booking.com, TripAdvisor. We tried Mr. B&B because we have some listings in this area. But for someone that is using all these channels, what would you tell a host that has tried and has failed? So, and this includes me, where I have put a couple properties in Booking.com and they just didn't get bookings like Airbnb, right? And also we can discuss after this a little bit about how you're managing on your end all of these platforms coming in, which obviously there are softwares, but what is your method? I would love to know that. So question one is, what would you tell the audience or a host, exactly that what to do if they're just getting started with the other platforms, right? And then two, what have you used as far as softwares?
Sure. Well, first off, if you're looking at multiple channels, really it all starts with making sure you have your marketing correct. This includes making sure your pictures are professional pictures, not cell phone pictures. There is a huge difference. You want to make sure that the descriptions and everything that's listed on the property is written professionally. I'm an okay writer. And when I first got started, I wrote all my own material and all my own listings. And then I found someone that was an incredible writer. And I actually pay her a tremendous amount of money on every single listing to make the listings wow, right? To grab attention. Once I get those things in place, the photos and the descriptions, then I can essentially copy and paste that into the different websites. Now, it is important to know that every single one of these websites, like booking.com, they have different search algorithms than you're going to find in Airbnb. One of the biggest things that can help you, regardless of websites, is your amenities. So I was watching the video you put up earlier this week on your rehab home in Houston. Beautiful home, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have had so many amenities in that home, right? So on Airbnb, it's very easy to go check all the amenities that you have listed there. Every time you list on a new platform, whether it's VRBO, Booking.com, you want to make sure that every single one of those amenities is listed correctly, because on average, and I learned this from the VRBO conference over the years, they have an annual conference, right? The average person can put up to 6 amenity searches when they're looking for a home. So if you have a coffee maker and you don't say you have a coffee maker, and the guest is trying to book a property and they say, you know what, I've got to have a coffee maker, right? And you didn't choose to list that as an amenity, then you're not going to show up in their search results. You've already lost. So it's critical, make sure you have those good pictures, make sure you have good descriptions, make sure all the amenities are filled out properly. And in my experience, that can be about 80% of it. We always talk about the 80-20 rule, right? You get that done and you're going to get about 80% performance. Beyond that, you start getting into a lot longer conversation, but those are the 3 things I would really focus on.
Yeah, number one to me, man, if you have just the opportunity to catch that first impression on any guest at any point of time, right? With the pictures and the title, I think that you've captured that want and need, right? Because people buy on emotion. They don't buy or book. In this case, book. They don't book logically. They book on emotion, right? So whenever they're looking at the picture of your property, then they're gonna think, wow, am I gonna feel good inside this property? So what you have to do, right, is make them feel good when they look at that photo, and then also make them feel good when they read that title, right? So in my case, I really focus on amenities are great. Yes, I do agree. And then you have search people, but I think because of just because of so many, at least Airbnb, so I'm not an expert in any other platform. I'm not going to claim that at all, but I am in Airbnb and I know this platform because I play it every day, right?
Right.
At least on Airbnb, it is big time on those 2. And I mean, the search is so complicated. It's actually complicated in a way that if you search for a property on Airbnb, it doesn't give you the area. It doesn't give you certain aspects that you're looking for. It makes it a little bit more blind for the customer, for the guest, that allows you to search by amenity and then throws you all the entire map because they're trying to give you as many choices as they want, right? And then that algorithm is very hard to understand with Airbnb and the other ones as well, So, but I do love that focus on the amenities, man.
Absolutely. And a lot of times it takes practice. I remember when I first got into this, I had a home and I thought it was listed correctly. And then I went and I tested it and I played customer for a day. And I logged on to Airbnb and I said, okay, if I'm a family of 3, I've got a pet, right? And I want to stay in this area of town, is it going to show up? And it wasn't showing up. And I was scratching my head going, my listing has all these things. Why is it not showing up? Well, it turned out that I didn't have the pets listed properly. And I was excluding everything on that particular house, which is extremely pet friendly. I try and build all my own personal houses pet friendly with no carpet. And I call it renter proof, if you will, right? And, I didn't have that one listed correctly. So after taking that lesson, I'm always big on learning from your mistakes. I all the time will play customer for a couple hours, and I have different scenarios of different types of customers out there. What are their demographics? What are they looking for? What amenities might they be searching for? And then I just start searching, and I make sure that my homes pop up in those searches, as long as, of course, they meet those amenities. You never want to say you've got an amenity you don't have. Trust me, that is a very bad idea. But if you're supposed to be searching, right, it's going to take time across multiple platforms. You can't just now do the search on Airbnb. You have to do it on all the websites and impersonate that customer and make sure everything's coming through correct.
So now that, if you have perfected or at least made your properties visible to everybody, right? To wider, so you're on several platforms. Now people are checking you out and you're getting bookings, right? And how are you managing all of them? And I know that this is not a management, it's more marketing, but let's tell the group how you're managing them, and I'd love to know.
Yeah. So great question. When you have multiple properties, once you get above, I'd say 5 properties, you're going to have to move to a software to help you manage that, because it is extraordinarily difficult to manage multiple properties on multiple platforms. Truth be told, I started running into challenges at 3 properties where I was like, man, I've got all these websites, all these listings, and only 3 properties. And you've got to have a centralized way to deal with that. And there's a ton of softwares out there that are available on the market that you can use. Now, if you're just starting out, if you only have 1 or 2 listings, you've got a couple of options. You can do it on your own. It's very easy to sync the calendars. You can Google it on every channel. If you're listed on VRBO and Airbnb, you want to sync those calendars together. So if someone books on the VRBO platform, it automatically shows it as booked on the Airbnb platform. So definitely, something to look for. Very easy to do with a Google search. The more platforms you add, the more complicated it becomes. So, at a certain point, you either have to hire a professional website company like what I do and what you do, or you have to buy your own software, and the softwares can be expensive to start up, although well worth their money if you've got enough properties to support it.
No, I agree. We have tried VRBO. We're actually on VRBO. We've tried Booking.com and didn't get too many bookings on Booking.com, which is our next. We're going to reventure, and this is like a year and a half ago, right?
Right.
And then now that we're gearing more towards the unique vacation homes with pools, homes with bigger amenities rather than the apartments. So we're expanding another part of our business. So you definitely need, if you're in a vacation rental area, you've got to be on VRBO. You've got to be on HomeAway for sure. VRBO on HomeAway and Booking.com too. Those are the top three: Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com. Right. So
It's interesting, Airbnb is getting to go public, in the next couple of weeks. I think they go public.
Yeah.
They've had a domination on this for years, but, a company like VRBO has been around for 30 years, and they are quickly investing more money into making their platform better for hosts to try and put a dent in that Airbnb business, and they're doing it. So is Booking.com. Now, the pandemic's kind of thrown a lot of stuff up in the air, right? But you do have a clear end of the pandemic coming with all these vaccines. We're going to get there. And when we do, I anticipate Airbnb is going to start facing much stiffer competition from Expedia, from Booking.com, from TripAdvisor. I mean, TripAdvisor gets 400 million people a year. Right now, they're booking hotels on TripAdvisor. It doesn't take a whole lot of marketing effort to tell your base, hey, you booked a hotel with us. Why don't you try booking a vacation rental now? And that's going to eat into Airbnb's business, and it's going to create a lot of competition. So I think right now, during the pandemic, we have some months here. There's not a huge push by these larger platforms to go after this vacation rental business, because they're still trying to stop the bleeding, if you will, from their hotels and everything in the pandemic. They've laid off thousands of people. There's a lot of pain going on. Yep. But they are definitely repositioning themselves to make a huge push into this in the next year. So a lot of this conversation we're having today is things that are on the horizon, where we're going to have to be very adaptable as hosts to be listed in multiple places to pick up that business.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit more on the end of like optimization for our listings, and what we do to optimize the listings. Aside, there's a really cool trick that Airbnb rolled out, and aside from your pictures, your description, your SEO, you've got to know how the customers are researching, right? But this cool trick is if you want more views, at least on Airbnb, and we'd love to know some about the other platforms, right? If you want more views, there's one trick, and I don't know if most people use it. You've got to have possibly an actual experienced host platform. I'm not 100% sure, but if you do have in your full calendar of each listing, this is probably for hosts that have 3 or more. If you click on your full calendar, there's a really cool little thing that says promotion, right? And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed, right? Every time we run a little promotion, then the views, they actually count the views for that particular listing for that period of promotion that you've created, and it drops you so many views. It's called a promotion, and it's on the top right of your full calendar, and you've got to be on the platform. Your listing has to be on there for 30 days. That's one. And then the other one, I think that there's a minimum review. I'm not 100% sure, but have you noticed that little area? And since you're in several more platforms, maybe you don't get into the nitty gritty or more specific on Airbnb, since you're
right. I definitely noticed it. I've tried it a couple times. Typically, when I'm looking at using the promotion, it's for the last minute bookings. In normal times, I don't have a tremendous amount of openings that aren't booked weeks in advance, right? This week, I've got some openings because we had a lot of cancellations come through due to a surge in coronavirus numbers, and people are getting concerned to travel a little bit. But in general, that's a wonderful tool to use that promotions and throw a discount on and say, hey, we're giving a 20% discount for anybody that wants to book. And the other channels, do have something similar. On VRBO, they give you boost points. So once you hit a certain level on VRBO, they've got a thing called Boost, and you earn basically credits as you get more bookings. So after you've had, 5 or 10 bookings, they say, okay, you've earned 1,000 points. and you can actually use those points to buy a increase in your listing. So instead of showing up as number 25 in that area, use your points and you say, okay, I need, 3 weeks from now to appear at the top. I need to get booked on that date. I'm going to use some boost points, and all of a sudden, instead of listing your home as the 25th available one, you're listed in the top 5. Similarly, Booking.com has a mobile booking discount where they're really pushing a discount. And they say, hey, if you book from a mobile phone, you get 5% off. And that drives just a tremendous amount of views and clicks. I will say the more properties you have, the more challenging that becomes, because you're now trying to make sure you don't underprice something too much and you've got other discounts there. I've developed spreadsheets personally that help me track this and look at each individual house and make sure I'm not stacking too many promotions on top of one another and giving away the cow, right? So just some different things you can do. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm very, very curious about Booking.com and how that SEO works there. That's a really cool tip, man. Thanks for that about VRBO and the points. That's great. So if somebody here doesn't have the other platforms, they're only using Airbnb, and mostly we're only using Airbnb ourselves, right? And then they jump on a different platform and they don't get their bookings. Is Booking.com, are you maneuvering the prices just like you maneuver the prices on Airbnb? Because I've got a certain technique, and I've got several strategies that I input on those open dates in my calendar. If there's an open day or two within a weekend or something, we've got a strategy for that. There's 3-4 days, we've got a strategy for that. Long-term slow seasonality, we've got a strategy for that. So do you have strategies? And I know VRBO doesn't have so many actual, like whenever I log into VRBO, you cannot do like a 2-day discount, right? Mm-hmm. But whenever you can do it and you don't have rule sets, none of that. So those are really cool. And those promotions or those types of SEO of discounts, they give you the visibility in Airbnb, but how do you achieve that visibility, extra visibility in Booking.com and VRBO HomeAway and TripAdvisor? Because there's nothing on VRBO. Right. The boost points are one thing. I've got automated pricing set up on all my listings that I use through software. If I have a unit that say runs $100 a night, right? Just for easy math. Starting at, I think, about 21 days out, my software will actually start discounting that price to get that date booked. So if we've got availability 3 weeks from now and it's still unbooked, tomorrow, instead of being $100, it'll be $99 and then $98, $97, and it might go all the way down to whatever I declare the minimum is. There's a certain point where I'd rather be vacant than take a booking, because you start getting some tenants that may not be worth the return, right? You've got to be able to cover damage and some things that may come up. But I'll set my minimum and I'll say, all right, start discounting aggressively until we get it booked. And it's very rare that I ever have vacancies. If I have vacancies, it's usually because it's for scheduled maintenance or a last minute cancellation, and that typically wouldn't happen except during this pandemic. We're seeing a little bit more of that, just with some of the travel, barriers people are running into. Nice. We use Price Labs to do our pricing, and they have some amazing, really, really awesome customizations, group customizations for areas, building, orphans. I know you told me that I think you use, is it Wheelhouse? Yeah, I use Wheelhouse on mine, and they do a tremendous job. Priceline and these other ones, they're really good. And when I did my research, I found that UseHouse was actually designed by statisticians with PhDs specifically for short-term rentals, where Price Labs and some of these other ones, they were actually designed for the hotel industry, and then they went over into the short-term industry. Yeah, and there's a few others out there as well, and I don't quote me on that, but that was what I remember from my research a couple years ago. And I fell in love with Wheelhouse, and they take care of me, and they do a good job of pricing. One thing I would recommend everybody avoid is using the pricing algorithms supplied by VRBO or Airbnb. In my experience, it's a race to the bottom. They're, particularly Airbnb right now, I think they're hyper focused on showing good occupancy percentages for their IPO coming up. And
they really are just doing whatever they can to keep the cash in that bank, man. So
right.
They actually offered certain hosts their shares at a discounted price or something like that. So we've got some questions, and I've got a couple of friends in the group that I know, Couture Wilson, so we'll answer the questions in just a minute. But do you have anything on that you could think on SEO for the outside of Airbnb platforms right now that could be of value for anyone watching?
Well, get the right keywords, right? Use keywords that are going to cover all your amenities, not just in checking the amenities, but also listing them correctly in your descriptions that you have them, because each of these websites do have crawlers, and they're going to go look at those listing descriptions. And, when you get into that, you want to make sure that the crawlers are correctly picking up your listing. The picture that you use can be very important. Another couple tips on SEO is don't go look at your own Airbnb listing often. If you go look at your listing and don't book, the computer reads that as people aren't interested in this listing. So you want to actually avoid looking at your own listing too frequently. Every now and then you need to do it. But if you have a lot of people go look at your listing and they don't end up booking it, it's going to hurt you in the rankings. And Airbnb is going to say, you know what? People always look at this house, but no one ever books it. So let's move it down in the rankings. So just some little things like that.
Yep. So big focus. You're absolutely right on that one. So you want to get a good average of about 2,000 to 3,000 views per month per listing, right? So that's close to 75 to 100 views. And I've noticed this because I've tracked the views on our listings. And if you're doing 1,000, there was a time where there was very few, right, during the pandemic, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, right? Only the amount of views. So you want to get as many views, but also from those views, you want to stay at a little bit of a higher conversion rate, So the more views it gets, cool, it keeps going up in the rankings. But if no one books it, then it drops it down, right? So
I got a question for you. What would you consider a good booking conversion rate on Airbnb?
Actually, that's a great question, man. Thank you very much. We are averaging 0.27 to 0.3. I would say a good booking conversion rate is depending on what type of listing you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're gonna have more views on the smaller listings, and your booking conversion rate will be much lower if you're full, right? And you're gonna have, so for example, you said you're full, right? So if you're full, you're gonna be much lower. So the conversion rate, it's that metric that you can't really base on, but a good average for us at least is 0.27 because of the location of our listings, right? If you're full, your booking conversion rate is going to be much lower, and if you're empty, it's going to go up, and then it's going to fill up. It's going to go up and down. So in my opinion, 0.25 to 0.3 is pretty good, right? And then our occupancy stays pretty steady even through the pandemic, except for April. Who saw that in April? We crashed with our face down, man. Everybody did. Right. Everybody did, and it's okay. It's okay because we are bouncing back strong, and despite of these surges of COVID, the industry is still strong. A lot of people are booking. there are some areas that I don't recommend for anyone watching either the replay or, or live right now. I don't recommend the downtown areas. I don't recommend areas where there's a lot of movement, right? And by the way, if you're watching right now, I would love if you could hashtag live. And then if you're watching the replay, I would love if you could hashtag replay. And then if there's any value that you got from this last 20, 30 minutes, I'd love to know also, because we're here to serve, we're here to bring some value to you guys. So if there's any value you're getting right now, please hashtag value. All right. Love it. Let's answer these questions. I think we've got some questions here. So, let's go to the question. What is the second best hosting app aside from Airbnb? So the second best, I would say, is Booking.com. What do you think?
Booking.com in normal instances is very strong. With the pandemic, Booking.com is a little off right now because most of the people using that are doing trips kind of unplanned, if you will. Right now, VRBO and HomeAway are very strong. You have people right now that do not want to stay in hotels. People are going out of their way to avoid crowds and the coronavirus. And it's been wonderful for our industry because if you have a single family residence that's nice, your money this year, because VRBO, HomeAway, Airbnb, people are seeking those out and they're booking. So those would be the first ones I target. Make sure you're on Airbnb and Vrbo. From there, I would explore hitting up the other three, which is Booking.com, TripAdvisor, and the entire Expedia group. Expedia, yeah. You can get your listings to appear on Expedia. You do have to have a certain number of listings to be able to do it if you're using the software. But I believe anybody can just go on to Expedia and do it for a single listing. One thing we didn't talk about also is if you really want to make some good money, you need to build your own website for repeat customers.
And we've got a question on that actually. So, Katura, what's the best platform for building a website? So go ahead, brother.
Well, with my software package, I use MyVR, and they had a website included with that. So, if you look at, and there's tons of them like Hostfully and MyVR and Kigo, there's so many of them. And these softwares will build you a website. The other option is you can probably go on Fiverr and you can actually pay somebody just to design you a website that'll take reservations. They're not overly complicated. So you can go that route. And the nice thing is on average, the total fees from a platform are about 15 to 18%. So if you are getting people to book with you directly, you can make, an extra 10% and still offer guests a discount to book with you directly.
Yes, one thing about these softwares though, if you're building a website, Katura, if you're building a website, make sure that you go after a software that doesn't control everything. So let me explain what I mean by that. I don't know what your site actually, how it works, but in Hostfully, which we used for a few months, and I'm very familiar with the platform, once Hostfully took over, you had to do everything from Hostfully. There's no way you could change anything through Airbnb or your other platforms, right? How that affects you is that the syncing is lagged at times. And I've noticed so many times that we needed to make the changes on different prices for listings immediately, and then the syncing was lagged, and then there are some actual like details or buttons that you can't access on Hostfully, but you could access them on Airbnb. But since Hostfully doesn't have them, right, then you can access them. So you can change X, Y, Z. So when you're looking at that, make sure that that third-party website doesn't fully control. You can still make edits. One example would be us utilizing SmartBnB. It doesn't have a website, but SmartBnB allows us to actually control everything, right? So we control everything from one platform, and they keep increasing. They're just not messaging anymore their back end, their app has come out, and we use them fully again, and we pay the same amount as we pay for Hostfully. The only thing we don't get is a website. It was limited, and through the pandemic, here was my biggest issue. And I'd love to hear what you have on solving this, but there was guests that would come and there was damages. I would charge them a deposit and the deposit would bounce. So that was my big issue with Hostfully. There's two big issues that I had. One is the access to your listing details, and then the deposit. I didn't like that. What about yours?
So mine is more full control like Hostfully as far as pricing. Now, there are some things, depending on the channel, that I can go override, but there's some things that's controlled by my centralized platform. So if I need to make any changes, I change it there. The advantage of that is it keeps you consistent. If I make a change in my platform, or in my software, it's going to push it out to my website and all the channels all at the same time. You are absolutely correct. There is a lag. So everything's not instant. And it depends on the channel. Some of them, it can be a 10-minute lag, and some of them can be up to hours until it updates on the other channel.
Yep. So if you need to make a booking immediately, you're searching for a discount. Huge tip is you got to follow up on that inquiry. Those are hot leads, right? And if you are negotiating with somebody and you're trying to follow up on that inquiry, and then you don't have that change for hours, what happens? You lose it. You lose the reservation, right? So, man, that was pretty cool. I appreciate you, Carl. Do we have any more questions, guys? We had quite a few number of people watching us today. Katura, I hope that served you, and that was great. I know there's one more, I think.
Yeah.
When am I going to have another class? Very soon, Katura. It's coming. Automated pricing softwares. Do we use Guan? Carl uses Wheelhouse. And then Interloop Homestays, our management company, uses Price Labs. They're both just as good. It's your choice. But Price Labs has and I don't know if Wheelhouse does, but has a new option to be able to analyze your market through their market dashboards option, which allows you to get current data from today, from the last 60 days to today. And when you are making changes, being up to date with current data, market data is good. And it's $10 a piece, a current, an area, right? So I couldn't spend another $500-600 with all the listings we have, but we do it per area every once in a while to check once things start slowing down. Sometimes you have those mishaps, especially especially right now to the pandemic. Like October was a really bad month for a lot of hosts here. While we had a decent month, my August was great. September was phenomenal. Almost hit records. Then October, I was expecting even go higher. I'm like, man, the industry is like 1,000% back. Nope, it went down. We were down by maybe about 10% in sales that month. And then November went up a little bit again, where we're ahead. But when you have those market changes, which is going to happen all the time, especially throughout right now, having access to current market data is extremely important. So I don't know if Wheelhouse does. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Wheelhouse?
They do have some market reports available, and I do pull those. They don't quite give me all the information I love. So, once or twice a year, I purchase the AirDNA data as well, and I use that. It's important to have multiple reference points as well. One of the things I don't like about the AirDNA data is it doesn't always include accurate information for the VRBO side, I feel, although they're very accurate on the Airbnb side. So you just have to be careful. Data is wonderful. I am extraordinarily analytical, so I can sit there and crunch data and create pivot tables and get all nerdy on it for hours, and I love it. But at the end of the day, you've got to be very cautious with data because it can lead you to making some improper assumptions and price yourself out of some revenue. So I treat it with a grain of salt, even though I love getting my geek on.
Oh, here's a big tip, guys. Data is only a reference, right? So if you're looking at data, even though you can use it, you can do better. Because if you have the ability to take care of your customer with a 5-star guest experience, right, every time, if you have a better listing, if you have better amenities, if you have better pictures, that is only a number of that area's listing. So you can do better you can do better than what the data is telling you, right? You can do better than that average daily rate that neighborhood's telling you, or you can do worse. So it all actually falls on you. So being here today and learning the small tips, I hope you guys are writing down these tips, right? And applying them in your business, one tweak at a time, it helps you improve your listing. So data, that is irrelevant at the end of the day, after you literally have tweaked your listing enough that you know that perfect sweet spot for your listing, right? And you can always raise the standard a little bit by improving certain areas, and it all comes back on the reviews. So I think we got one more question. Anything else, Carl? I think we got one more question, and man, today was great.
Sure. What's the other question?
How do you get the best affordable cleans? How much do they charge you per cleaning in terms of scaling business? What are your criterias for getting your next unit and making it profitable? So that'll be a long conversation. As far as cleans, we can discuss cleans a little bit. The criteria for getting the next unit. That all depends, right? But I'll give my opinion. I'd love to hear yours, brother. And then the last one is, how do you get guests for long-term stays? Wow. Why don't we talk about since we're doing marketing today, let's talk about long-term stays.
Yep. So long-term stays can actually be very easy if you do all the other things we talked about today and then offer some long-term discounts. So I've got both weekly discounts and over 30-day discounts. And if you price those appropriately, then you can get those booked. And another tip to getting long-term discounts is stop booking up everything right away. Think about it like this. If you want a long-term discount and you book one weekend in March, it's now impossible to get a long-term tenant in March because you got someone that booked 2 days. So I make certain to keep my pricing very high further out because I love those long-term tenants. It decreases our operating costs. We get less wear and tear on the house, and we can also get great revenue. So it's a combination of making sure the house isn't booked, keeping your calendar open, and making sure you've got the appropriate discounts. So what I would do is I would start at 5%, and then I'd keep moving it down until you find people are starting to book long-term. And, you'll know when you hit that spot, but make sure you keep your calendar open by raising your prices further out, or you're never going to get long-term tenants.
Yep. A couple tricks I want to add on here as well is adding these long-term amenities, right? And most of us, we're not going to have the long-term amenities listed, but if you want to get long-term bookings, then you've got to add those long-term amenities. Think what long-term tenants need and like, right? They're going to need, more linens. They're going to need a few other things. So get a little deeper into thinking if you want to get long-term tenants. And then also a trick that worked for me during the pandemic, we've kind of moved things around and we're testing other titles, but add it to your title. At least on Airbnb, maybe VRBO as well. I don't know how it works on the other ones, but add those to your title, because sometimes people are just scanning through things, through listings and through areas, and then they're just looking at that picture that calls their attention. And if the title says long-term and the picture looks good, that's perfect, right? So you're attracting what you desire. So, all right. Anything else you got for us today?
Just thank you for having me on. I have my own podcast. It's called the Short-Term Rental Marketing Podcast. It's on Facebook, and I also have my YouTube channel, which is Irvy Homes. You can check out both of those. I do put a lot of content on there pretty consistently for how to improve your marketing. So everything from short videos to longer videos like this, where I also have guests. So, please go on there and subscribe. Right now, I am at 65 people subscribed to the YouTube channel. I'm begging everybody, please go subscribe to that, because I'm really trying to get to 100 so I can get a customized URL on YouTube. So,
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So, I appreciate you having me on, and also feel free to hit me up on Facebook or LinkedIn at Carl Vidal.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys, for watching. My name is George Salas again. This is Win Wednesdays. We're here to serve. We're here to win together. And if you're watching this off the platform of the Facebook group, please join us at thenewrealestateinvestor.com. That is thenewrealestateinvestor.com to be able to join this group, watch Win Wednesdays, and win together. So thank you so much again. I hope it serves you. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
And if you guys are interested in learning more, I've just released my virtual assistant course. So I'm going to leave a link in. You're welcome to check it out. I just released it this week. Let me know if this served you. I'll see you soon.